Thank you very much, High Commissioner. It is indeed a pleasure to be online on this Reimagining the Digital Economy Trade Plenary. A very good morning, good afternoon, good evening to our friends online. So the topic today, Reimagining the Digital Economy, is very timely as we go through a black swan event marked by COVID-19. COVID-19 offers us a rare and valuable opportunity to rethink and revisit all our assumptions and beliefs about life and society. The term digital economy was first introduced by my friend Don Tapscott in his book, The Digital Economy, Promise and Peril in the Age of Networked Intelligence, and that was in 1995, about 25 years ago. However, we can no longer neatly compartmentalize the economy into digital and analog. The digital world touches every facet of the economy, as the High Commissioner mentioned, and the digital economy is slowly giving way to a new reality where the entire economy is becoming digital. When we talk about reimagining the digital economy, we have to place it in the context of rising unemployment, economic hardship, and widening wealth disparities, especially after COVID-19. I wish to argue that reimagining and reinventing the digital economy means reimagining 5 things on which I will focus today. First, reimagining the way people connect with jobs and acquire skills. Second, reimagining how we can increase our access to data and trust, because data is so foundational to the digital economy. Third, how can we reimagine analog organizations by adopting something called digital twins? Fourth, how can we reimagine networks of organizations using concepts of industrial internets and networking platforms? And finally, how do we reimagine our ambitions? And the last point is particularly important. I would request I think we can, go to the next slide. So the High Commissioner mentioned about the DEPA modules, and the Digital Economy Partnership Agreement is indeed an important milestone. It represents the best thinking on how we should support trade in a digital world. You can see the various modules of the DEPA agreement on this slide. I will be focusing on some of these modules today. I will try to present some examples of opportunities for governments and businesses within the framework of DEPA, focusing on business and trade facilitation, data issues, the wider trust environment, emerging trends and technologies, innovation and the digital economy, and small and medium enterprises cooperation. Let me first lay out the broader context for reimagining the digital economy. Researchers at the Australian National University recently estimated that the global economy could lose up to $21.8 trillion in 2020 due to COVID-19. The estimate of 21.8 trillion is in US dollars and not Australian dollars. The figure can be seen in the context that global GDP in 2019 was about $142 trillion. The International Labour Organization estimates that working hour losses for the second quarter of 2020, which just ended last month, compared to the last quarter of 2019, was the equivalent of 400 million full-time jobs. Moreover, out of the global workforce of 3.3 billion, 1.6 billion in the informal economy have also been impacted severely by the economic consequences of COVID-19. So while we see a loss in global GDP and rising unemployment, we are also witnessing greater wealth inequality. Many technology companies have benefited from COVID-19. Companies like Amazon, Apple, Google, Netflix, Zoom have seen their stocks rise. In fact, between January 1, 2020 and April 15, Jeff Bezos's fortune is estimated to have increased by $25 billion. This increase is larger than the total GDP of Honduras, which was $23.9 billion in 2018. We see large disparities across countries in the world. Qatar's GDP per capita is $117,000, while the Central African Republic stands at a meager $661. About 2,200 billionaires have more wealth than 4.6 billion people, or 60% of the world's population. I mention unemployment and wealth inequality because we cannot reimagine the digital economy without focusing attention on these sobering shifts around us. Of course, as the High Commissioner also reminded us, climate change is another big element which we should be taking into account. While a post-COVID-19 would offer a grim picture, it also provides distinct opportunities for companies all over the world, especially for Singapore and New Zealand-based companies. So let's now go to the next slide. So with unemployment dramatically rising across the world, we will need to reimagine how we make connections between the supply and demand for skills. We need systems that can personalize and customize recommendations for each of us. I believe there is a huge opportunity for companies in this space. Labor market analytics is an area that is ripe for disruption. If we look at existing repositories of talent, data especially, the picture has many gaps. LinkedIn mainly captures data on white-collar professionals. LinkedIn has 575 million users as compared to the global workforce of 3.3 billion. The biggest talent platform, Upwork, was having about 14 million users just 2 years ago. So there is a need to pool public and private data on jobs and skills so that we can take advantage of the power of analytics and artificial intelligence to customize job matches, define skilling journeys, and streamline labor markets. Governments would be well advised to promote standard credentialing solutions that capture not just educational qualifications of individuals, but also their work experiences. There is an opportunity for governments, job posting platforms, academic institutions, training organizations, companies large and small, and analytics and AI players to pool data and collaborate on a data zone or a data market around employment. Singapore has come out with a trusted data sharing framework that offers useful guidance to companies to share their data. It is my personal view that governments also need to regulate and ensure that the private sector contributes data that is vital to the well-being of society. And meaningful employment is obviously one such area. Of course, governments also need to have better systems for the collection of more granular data on the workforce and share it with the industry. Let us now go to data markets. Data is foundational to the digital economy. Some say data is the new oil. But even more than oil, data is as essential to the digital economy as water and air are to life. Incidentally, there's even a data analytics company named H2O.ai. Data is also critical to the development of AI solutions. Companies in the future will compete on AI. Bank of America employs 209,000 people and serves 67 million customers. And Financial employs fewer than 10,000 people and uses AI to serve more than 700 million customers and offers a broader scope of services. According to one estimate, AI is likely to add $15.4 trillion to global GDP by 2030. Since data is the fundamental building block of AI, we will need better and bigger data markets. Data markets require data to be inventoried and assigned a monetary value. Perhaps we can reimagine data markets by focusing on cyber risk insurance. Data markets need inventories of data with a determination of monetary value, as I mentioned. And cyber risk insurance companies do just that. While offering cyber risk insurance, the premium needs to be calculated based on the value of all digital assets, including data. Singapore is a major financial hub with a large number of insurance companies having a presence in the city. The Monetary Authority of Singapore has been active on cyber risk management, and in 2016 had launched a cyber risk management project, bringing together industry, academia, and government in a partnership to tackle demand and supply challenges confronting the cyber insurance marketplace. It might be useful to work with cyber risk insurance players and the private sector to explore the promotion of data markets as a public-private partnership. Such an effort would be of immense value to both the public and private sectors. Given the increased cyber risks, it may also be worthwhile to explore mutual data residency between New Zealand and Singapore along the lines of Estonia's data embassies. If a disaster strikes one country, the data could be held securely in a second geographical location. Perhaps this is already being done, but I'm not sure. Let's now go to job creation opportunities. There is a big opportunity for creating jobs in the digital economy. The opportunity lies in the potential of reimagining analog organizations by adopting the idea of digital twins. A digital twin is the digital equivalent of any person, place, object, or process in the analog world. We will need to create digital twins for almost every organization and every entity going forward. There is a business opportunity for companies in Singapore and New Zealand, and of course others, to team up to help SMEs to digitize at scale, not only in Singapore and New Zealand, but across the world. The government of Singapore is supporting the digitization of Singaporean businesses, and even recently, as part of its digital resilience bonus, it is offering 10,000 Singapore dollars to companies to digitize. This digitization could be in terms of HR and payroll, or onboarding to e-commerce platforms, or using analytics and AI in their businesses. The opportunity of creating digital twins for companies and helping transform them is a significant global opportunity. Let me take the garments industry as an example. The fashion industry is a $2.4 trillion industry. Fashion employs 1 out of 6 people on the globe, making it the most labor-intensive industries. Most of these employees are women. Fewer than 2% of garment workers earn a living wage. Sustainability is a significant issue. 1 kilo of cotton requires nearly 10,000 liters of water. Processing 1 t-shirt and 1 pair of jeans requires almost 19,000 liters of water. If fashion production maintains its current pace, the demand for water will surpass the world's total supply by 40% by 2030. There is now a growing international movement focusing on sustainability in the garments industry. The fashion industry needs to digitize its supply chains for sustainability. Garments need to be rendered into 3D for use with virtual fitting rooms on e-commerce platforms. There is even a growing demand for virtual garments for fashion photography on Facebook or Instagram. Every SME will therefore require digitization of processes, products, and even workers if healthcare and skills development has to be addressed systematically. Digitization affords a considerable opportunity for companies to systematically team up and address the combined needs of supply chain digitization, process digitization, product digitization, and also onboarding companies onto e-commerce platforms. And this in itself is a huge employment generation opportunity. Of course, if we have to do digital twinning at scale, we would need to develop the architecture and standards for doing this so that we can derive the maximum benefits from this effort. Governments will need to play an active role in promoting digital twin standards and principles. For example, the Center for Digital Built Britain has developed the Gemini principles as part of the UK's National Digital Twin Strategy. The principles revolve around purpose, trust, and function. Let me now come to the industrial internet. We need to reimagine as well the connections between companies. The Chinese initiative on industrial internets offers us an excellent model. Chinese policymakers have decided to deepen their technological upgrading following COVID. In early March, President Xi Jinping delivered a keynote speech announcing the development of the industrial internet and construction of new digital industrial infrastructure. By mid-May, China's National Development and Reform Commission launched its Digital Transformation Partnership Action Plan 2020 to promote cloud-based intelligence involving large numbers of SMEs. Alibaba Cloud's industrial internet platform, for example, has been rolled out in Huzhou, which hosts 20,000 small-scale apparel manufacturers who account for half of China's sales revenue in the sector. The industrial internet involves the creation of networks of SMEs that can be rapidly configured for designing and delivering products, allowing low inventories, highly flexible supply chains, and more efficient production. The reason I brought up China's industrial internet is that the organizational structure of production and distribution in the future will be very different. Approaches like the industrial internet can better prepare companies to become fluid, reconfigurable organizations that can rapidly respond to their business environment. According to the Institute for the Future will see ad hoc pop-up teams that find each other through algorithms. Software could allow for composition of teams which are capable of delivering on complex and multifaceted tasks. If we had a detailed understanding, for example, of each company in Singapore and New Zealand, if you knew the skills and experience of each employee, if you knew about each product and service, and the track record of fulfillment, it would be possible to create algorithms that could rapidly scan tender opportunities and configure partner companies best suited to deliver on any engagement. I think this is an idea worth supporting both by the industry and by governments. It would prepare companies for the emerging world of pop-up enterprises in the future. The networking of companies could also be facilitated by connections to trade platforms like Singapore's networked trading platform. There was the recent news of Trade Tech, a UK-based electronic trading platform teaming up with the Singapore Management University with support from the Monetary Authority of Singapore to develop a quantum computing credit scoring system. This initiative targets $15 trillion trade finance market. Such credit scores might allow for almost instantaneous access to trade finance. The speed of decision-making would be an improvement to Alibaba Group's MyBank, which has its model of 3-1-0, 3 minutes to apply, 1 second to approve, and 0 humans involved. So Singapore and New Zealand both have a very compelling value proposition in trade and ease of doing business, something which Amit pointed out in his introductory remarks. New Zealand and Singapore are the top 2 countries on the World Bank's ease of doing business. I think there is an opportunity for both countries to jointly promote the network trade platform and their combined expertise and ease of doing business with other countries. The networking value that the platform can potentially bring to companies across the world can be significant. Bringing the trade platform and ease of doing business expertise to other countries could be pursued as a quasi-government, quasi-private sector effort. I finally come to my last slide. And this slide relates to the points that I made previously on reimagining our ambitions. Mariana Mazzucato is a professor at the University College London. She's the founder and director of its Institute for Innovation and Public Purpose. She completed an interesting study for the European Commission on mission-oriented research and innovation in the European Union. According to her, one of the best ways to promote innovation is to pursue mission-oriented projects. Such projects should be bold and have societal value with concrete targets. Ideally, they should be cross-sectoral, cross-actor, and cross-disciplinary. The pursuit of such projects can result in massive spin-offs, just like the Apollo mission to the moon. The mission to the moon resulted in the development of advanced technologies in aerospace, but also in low-tech industries like textiles. Singapore has launched its National Innovation Challenges with a prize of 2 million for each challenge and a pot of 40 million overall. While the program is well designed and targeted, its primary focus is on Singapore. I would suggest that we should also start looking at launching challenges that are global or planetary in nature and scope. These challenges will help our companies to develop cutting-edge technologies, attract the best talent from around the world, and inspire youth to pursue game-changing opportunities. Who knows, it might also lead to a complete reimagining of the digital economy.